Hey Savvy social workers, let's get into the question of the day and a few other practice questions. Please be reminded about the disclosure that is on the screen or disclaimer. All right, let's get into it. A social worker is meeting with a client who states that she has been feeling depressed. The client reports symptoms of insomnia, headaches, inability to eat, vomiting, and neck aches. What should the social worker do first? Okay, so a social worker is meeting with the client. Just from being able to study a lot of these questions, I know that whenever it says it's meeting with a client, that means that we are in the beginning phases of the helping process. So that means we are engaging and or assessing the client. And when I say assessing the client, I mean gathering information about the client's priority issue, presenting and priority issues. Okay, so this client states that she has been feeling depressed. That is why she's there. So that is what I refer to as the presenting problem. The client reports symptoms of all these symptoms, and so this is where my priority is going to be. She is giving me a list of some physical symptoms that she is experiencing, and the question is asking me, what should I do first? Okay, and so which I know that this means what is going to be the most important thing that I need to do about the priority, which is this list of physical symptoms that she has reported to me. Would I obtain a detailed social history on the client? Is that going to address the symptoms of insomnia and all the rest of this? It is not, so I am going to eliminate that out the gate. B, probe for a substance abuse problem. Is that going to address all of these physical symptoms? It is not, so I am going to eliminate that. Keep in mind and pay attention to the fact that I am referring back to the priority issue. I know that she came in saying that she was feeling depressed, but I want to focus on the priority, which is a whole bunch of these physical symptoms that she is giving me. And a lot of these are outside of depressive symptoms. So we're paying attention to the priority. Now, would the most important thing to do about these symptoms or the priority problem be to engage the client in establishing some goals? Okay, well, how is that going to address the symptoms reported here? It's not, so we're going to eliminate that as well. Option D, ask the client to seek medical consultation. Well, she's having some physical issues, some medical issues, so the most important thing, first and most important thing I want to do is have her seek medical consultation. The realm of the symptoms indicates a potential medical issue, which indicates that's my priority. That's where she needs to take action first, and that's where I need to encourage her to take action first. Okay, option C may be a step further along in the process while obtaining a social history. Option A, and assessing for substance abuse problems, that could be done later if it warrants that, but again, we want to focus on the priority issue. So her priority issue is these physical symptoms, and we know that it is important to first rule out medical issues. An African American social worker in an outpatient clinic is conducting an initial assessment on a Latino client. The social worker notes that the client appears very anxious, defensive, and somewhat hostile. After some discussion, it appears that the cultural differences may be interfering with the client's ability to develop rapport with the social worker. In order to best assist the client, what is the most appropriate way for the social worker to handle the situation? All right, so not even worried about the answer choices. Let me get back into this scenario, and we see that we have an African American social worker. That might be worthy to note, and she's in an outpatient clinic. We know that she's conducting an initial assessment, so that tells me I am in the beginning phase of the helping process. So that means I am tasked with engaging and or assessing the client, and this client is a Latino client. African American social worker, Latino client in an initial assessment. Okay, the social worker notes that this client appears anxious, defensive, and somewhat hostile. She can jump stupid if she wants to. However, after some discussion, it appears that the cultural differences may be interfering with the client's ability to develop rapport with the social worker. This is where my priority problem is going to be. Okay, so the presenting problem is that we note that this client, is feeling or behaving this way. But the real problem come in is that, you know, the cultural differences may be interfering with us building rapport. So that's where I want to focus in at, because that is the most important thing, even more important than what the client appears to be feeling or experiencing right now. The relationship between the two of us, we can't even get it together, so we want to prioritize that. The question is asking, in order to best assist the client, whenever I see this little order of words, and I know that I need to go right where the client is, meet the client where they are in that situation. So that means I want to meet them situationally as well as emotionally, and do what is most beneficial for them, right? So it's asking, what is the most appropriate way for the social worker to handle the situation? So when you see the word most, of course, best and most, that definitely means let's meet the client where they are. Most means we're going to do what makes the most sense. So what way makes the most sense for the social worker to handle the situation, keeping in mind that we're meeting the client where they are in the situation, emotionally and situationally. This client in this situation is anxious, defensive, and hostile, and apparently there's some cultural differences that's getting in the way. So we want to meet them right there in that situation and do what makes the most sense. What is the most appropriate way to address this priority issue that the cultural differences may be interfering with their ability to develop rapport, or the client's ability to develop rapport with the social worker, because the social worker probably good. Okay, so would the most appropriate way to address this be A, assure the client of the social worker's knowledge of Latino values? Will that make the client feel any better? Okay, will that address the issue that you say, oh, you know what, I assure you I know all about Latino and y'all values, I got this, chill out, calm down? No, that is not going to be the most appropriate way. All right. What about B? Challenge the client's negative perceptions about African Americans. Well, it didn't really say specifically that the client had a negative perception of African Americans, right? It's just saying some cultural differences that can be in the way we communicate, you know, or the way that maybe the social worker is presenting the information. That could be an issue. So we don't want to go off assuming that this client has negative perceptions about African Americans. So we're going to scratch that one as well. What about C? Would C be the most appropriate way to deal with this issue of cultural differences that may be interfering with the client's ability to develop rapport with the social worker? Offer to transfer the client to a Latino social worker. Yeah, that might be something. Is that the most appropriate way? I'm not sure, but I'm gonna leave that on pause until I see what's going on with D. Option D, acknowledge the client's concerns and discuss them with the client. Well, that to me is going to be the most appropriate way, because if the client is having some concerns, before we just ship them off, let's address this. We are in an initial assessment. This is the phase where we are trying to engage the client anyway and build rapport with the client. So let's try to deal with these concerns at the beginning of the therapeutic relationship building phase, and we might can, you know, nip that in the bud and continue on with the relationship. If then afterwards, you know, it's still an issue, then maybe we can offer to transfer the client to a Latino worker, since the cultural barriers is an issue. So again, the most important thing, the most appropriate thing to do, or the way to handle the situation, is to let's acknowledge this client's concerns and then discuss them with the client. And if it continues to be an issue, then we can offer to transfer the client to a Latino social worker. Next question. A medical social worker is conducting a visit with a 27-year-old client diagnosed with schizophrenia. The client informs the social worker that she was inappropriately touched in a sexual way by her physician at her last appointment. The audacity. After speaking to the client about the details of the incident, what should the social worker do next? All right, so we have a medical social worker. I'm big on paying attention to the role, because most of the time if they give you a role, it is going to be related to the answer that you need to pick. So we're conducting a visit with a 27-year-old client. It doesn't really say what phase we're in right now. I'm going to just say that we could possibly be in the middle phase, but because it's not clear, that means it's not going to be relevant to the answer. So I'm going to continue on. We're conducting a visit with a 27-year-old who is diagnosed with schizophrenia. That's going to be my presenting problem, because that is why I'm here. That's what's going on with the client, right? So now the client informs the social worker that she was inappropriately touched in a sexual way by her physician at the last appointment. This is a problem, and this is a priority problem. So that's where I'm going to focus, which means that's where I need to pick my answer based off of the presenting problem, not off of, off of the priority problem, not off of the presenting problem, the fact that she's diagnosed with schizophrenia. We consider that, but we focus and base our answer off of the main issue in the scenario, okay? After speaking with the client about the details, what should the social worker do next? This is the next question. So we don't want to just jump and do what comes next after the last thing in the situation. Sometimes that's the case, but I don't like to teach that as a rule of thumb, because that is not always the case. There is nothing absolute about this exam where you always do this or you never do that. So as a rule of thumb, I want you to think of when we have a next question, we are focusing on the last thing that the social worker did, and then we will do what comes next after that, if they tell you what the social worker did last. If they don't, then you can go to the priority issue and kind of do what needs to come after that. So in this case, it tells you the last thing the social worker did, which is she spoke to the client about the details of the incident. So this client told me that she was inappropriately touched, and I got all the details, like, girl, when this happened, how did it happen, where he touched you at, did he say anything while he was touching you? This is all the details that I'm getting. After I get these details, what am I going to do next? Will I contact the appropriate authorities? Most likely, yeah, but I don't know what the other answer choices are, so let me get into those before I just pick an answer. B, schedule a medication review. Scheduling a medication review is not going to address my priority issue of her telling me that her physician impounded her. So we're going to eliminate that. What my next thing be to do after she tells me about that is to contact the physician in question. No, I'm not going to contact him and alert him or anything like that. That's just not what we do. We're not investigators, so I'm not contacting him. Recommend legal counsel. So I'll be like, you know what, girl, you done told me this, but I recommend you go ahead and get you a lawyer and get things set up and let your lawyer handle this. No, as a social worker, I am a mandated reporter. She told me this. I don't care if she has schizophrenia. That is not my job to investigate to see if maybe she's being paranoid, delusional, or whatever the case. I am going to contact the appropriate authorities, and I am going to let them handle it, because as a mandated reporter, that is my duty. And my primary responsibility is to promote the well-being of my clients and to take reasonable steps to safeguard their rights who may lack decision-making capacity. So if she's diagnosed with schizophrenia, she may, have some limitations in that area. So it is my responsibility to look after her in that manner. So therefore, contacting the appropriate authorities is going to be the next thing I do. I hope that this was helpful. Again, like this video, leave me some comments, talk to me in the comments. I do try to talk back. Share this video with any of our colleagues that you feel like this will help, that needs to pass this exam ASAP. If y'all have any other suggestions for videos that y'all would like me to see, please just drop them in the comments. I do try to honor those as often as possible whenever I can get to the videos. So I do appreciate y'all being here with me. And again, if y'all have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section behind here. If y'all need any other study resources, feel free to visit my website, www.savvysocialworkerexamprep.com. You can also contact me through the email that's listed on the website. We have practice exams, we have practice questions, we have an online course, we have a plethora of study resources, topical study guides that just breaks down things to where you don't have to worry about reading through a whole book. So we have all of those things. Feel free to reach out to me via the website or email if you have any questions or you need assistance passing this exam. Thank y'all.